35 years ago, I conquered this castle. Watch the video to find out how. Kalimera, good morning. Today is Monday, May 12th, 2025, currently 68 degrees Fahrenheit, that is 20 degrees Celsius, a cloudy and cool day here in Olympia, as in the Olympics. The ancient archaeological site of the Olympics is just a few kilometers outside of the little town here. More about that later. So I spent last night in Pyrgos, which is just a 15-minute drive away from here. And I have to say, things are looking nicer now that we have arrived at this part of the Peloponnese Peninsula. Yesterday I drove down from Lefkada Island and Naupaktos, crossed over the bridge over the Corinth Canal, and from that point around Patras all the way to Pyrgos was one of the ugliest drives I've ever seen. Just really, so it was just really boring landscapes, lots of barking dogs. No barking dogs on the drive, but just dilapidated buildings, neglected looking towns, construction projects, etc. But arriving here, this town of Olympia is very nice and pleasant. If I had known that there were hotels here, then I probably would have stayed here last night instead of Pyrgos, which was quite a ugly little city there, but that is just the reality of parts of Greece. You have quite a range of places to see in this very varied country, packed with so much history, and today is going to be a day of history. So there are some nice looking restaurants here, but I also didn't know that there were restaurants in this town here, and so I stopped at a market and bought a few things. Here is my rental car, 35 euros, $40 US per day. So going to continue through town in the direction of the ruins and find a spot to stop, take a little break, and munch on breakfast. So breakfast is a very tasty looking cheesecake, a couple of cookies, not sure, some kind of nut, box of milk, olives, sesame bar, cheese, crackers, kefir, water. Excellent breakfast here. Just one little problem. It's starting to rain. Oh man. Let's hope it doesn't rain too much harder. That really ruins your Greek ruins exploring. I don't want my ruins ruined by the rain. Well, good breakfast, bad weather. What to do, what to do. Going to walk over to the ruins area and find somewhere to stay out of the rain for a little while, see what happens. And the rain is persisting. So let's start out in a museum. In the fertile valley of legendary Alpheus and its tributary Cladius, in a place of unique and superb natural beauty with rich mythological tradition, was founded the sanctuary of Zeus, father of gods and humans in the dawn of historic period. Although geographically isolated, as located in this corner of the western Peloponnese, Olympia stood out historically as the most important pan-Hellenic religious, political, and athletic center of the ancient Greek world. So, the weather is looking better. Anything could happen at this point. So the museum was really interesting there. Learned a lot from it. And this is not my first time here. So I came here on my first trip to Europe in 1990 when I was 18 years old. But I remember it very differently. For one thing, it was June. It was a hot, sunny day, and I don't remember it being so green like this. But here's a photo of me here 35 years ago. And so one of the things that I want to do while exploring the site is tell the story of that photo, including who took it. Whoa. So here is the entrance. It was 20 euros or $22 US for the ticket, which included the museum. So one of the reasons why I decided to tell this story here is because there's only so much that I can say about the site. But there's a lot to see here, so it's something to talk about while showing all of the various walls and structures and altars. But I will mix in, of course, some of the history as well. 2nd century BC to 5th century AD, large building complex, central court and baths of the Hellenistic period, rooms with impressive mosaics were constructed in Roman times. It was destroyed by an earthquake at the end of the 3rd century AD. The last repair dates back to the 5th century AD. So, mosaics, can we see the mosaics, or maybe those were the mosaics that were in the museum. There were some really impressive ones in there. But this was a very, very important site in the Pan-Hellenic world, as the board up there stated, and so Pan-Hellenic would mean across the Greek world. Hellenic, Greek. Hellas, Greece. So Greece was not a country then, it was a collection of city-states, and depending on the era, various configurations of the different regions, the rulers. For example, Alexander the Great. King of Macedon, but his father, King Philip II, conquered the rest of Greece and united Greece. And so at that time, then it was united. But there were many, many, many different phases of what you can call Greece now, with the larger overview of the world of people who spoke Greek or some variation of a Greek-related language and had similar traditions, including the pantheon of Greek gods. So Olympics, Mount Olympus, which I climbed also on that same trip back in 1990, then Mount Olympus is the home of Zeus, and the Olympic reference is to the pantheon of the 12 main Greek deities, and I forget what all those are, but this wasn't just a site of athletic competition, but it was a temple to Zeus, and so it had religious, spiritual significance as well as cultural. So some of the signs in the museum were explaining the traditions. So only men were allowed to participate and to watch the Olympic Games. They were performed nude. There were a few exceptions of women being allowed to watch. Now, somewhere I read that unmarried women were allowed to view the games. But on the signs in there, it didn't mention that, so not sure about that. But also, like a woman who represented the goddess or something like that was allowed to watch the games, like maybe a high priestess or something. So here's a mission for me. Can I find the spot where that photo was taken? Because it was kind of a distinctive spot. I remember it was through an archway. So let's wander around and see if I can find that while I tell the story. Okay. Because it's kind of a long one. I could just tell you this person who took the photo, but to set it all up properly requires telling quite a bit about my trip around Europe that time. So I will do my best to make it as short as possible. So, as I mentioned previously, I came to Greece in June of 1990 from Italy. Ferry from Brindisi to Corfu, and then another ferry after a few days on Corfu from Corfu to Patra. And on that ferry, I met this girl from Sweden. And we took the train together from Patras to Athens, and then from there went out to the Greek islands and ended up on Santorini, quite by coincidence, not knowing that it was the most popular Greek island at the time, but that's a whole other story. So I'm going to end that story there, but then it will be relevant later. So I just referenced King Philip II, and look at this. The Philippion. Its construction began by Philip II after his victory in the Battle of Chaeronea, 338 BC, and was dedicated to Zeus. After Philip's death, it was completed by his son, Alexander the Great. Whoa! It is the only circular building in the Altus. So there you go. That put some of the history in an exact place and time. As I said, King Philip II conquered Greece, and so this represents one of his victories. So, that trip to Europe began on May 2nd, 1990, when I landed in London. I began the trip in May, in part because my birthday is in April, and my parents wanted me to wait until I was 18 to start my trip to Europe, which made lots of sense. And also, that is a good time to start a trip to Europe, as I'm doing now, starting this trip here in early May. So I landed in London and then decided that my mission was going to be to hitchhike the entire length of the United Kingdom from Land's End, England, to John O'Groats at the top of Scotland. So there I can see Greek writing. I wonder if we'll see some Latin as well. It really is a phenomenal sight. Incredible columns. So glad that the weather improved. I just couldn't have made this video in the rain. So in the course of hitchhiking to the north of Scotland, I went through Wales and then headed for the Lake District to go hiking around and camping there. I had a tent. So I hitchhike into the Lake District and end up at this hostel, and there were 3 other people staying there. They might have been the only 3 other people there. And that's why I ended up talking with them. Anyways, there weren't many people there. But they were a guy from England, I forget his name, a woman from Australia, I forget her name, and a woman from England, Rosalind. I definitely remember her name. So we all spent some time together over the next couple of days, I guess. I think the next day we went on a day trip together. The guy from England had a car, so maybe he drove us somewhere. Metroon, 4th century BC, Doric peripteral temple with 6 columns. It was dedicated to the Mother of Gods, Rhea or Cybele. During Roman times, the temple was used as a cult place in honor of the Roman emperors. So we all kind of became friends over the course of a couple of days there. And as it turned out, then the English guy and the Australian girl got together as a couple. I forget if that happened then or if I heard about it later. But somehow I stayed in touch with Rosalind. Of course, this was before the internet. So no email, no Facebook. But I guess I had her phone number or something because, and I can't remember, the details of how this worked, but I came to Greece and then somehow I was in touch with her. She had a vacation week or whatever coming up and we arranged to meet up in Greece. We were just friends, but got along during those couple of days. And so we met somewhere. She flew from London. She was older. I was 18. She was 25. And so I can't remember where we initially met, but we explored around the Peloponnese together. And as things worked out, she ended up being my first girlfriend, even though we only were together for like a couple of weeks or something while we were here in Greece together. I forget if it was a week or two or what, but I feel like it was a bit more than a week. And so we traveled, I guess, just by bus. We didn't have a rental car because we definitely hitchhiked. Treasuries, 6th to 5th century BC. Small temple-like buildings donated by the Greek city-states and their colonies in South Italy and Sicily. To the sanctuary, only 5 out of 12 ruined treasuries are identified with certainty. Those of Sicyon, Selinus, Metapontion, Megara, and Gela. Okay, wow, so I guess this is the racetrack. Wow. Incredible. It is warming up, yes. So I have to go back in time just a little bit to Santorini with the Swedish woman. She was also 18, and I have to say, the most beautiful girl I've ever known. I was really into her, but nothing happened between us. She drifted off. But I definitely remembered her, and I would have a picture of her if my backpack hadn't been stolen in Paris later on that trip, at the very end of the trip when I was sleeping on the Pont Neuf bridge over the river Seine. Backpack stolen with various belongings, including 2 rolls of film that I hadn't gotten developed yet and so never got to see. I only shot 4 rolls of film on that whole 3.5 month trip, so very different times. That's like 1 photo per day. The stadium, middle of the 5th century BC. It is in the position of classical times. The embankments did not have stone seats. Capacity of the stadium is 45,000. So after Santorini, then I took a ferry back to the mainland, headed north, went to Meteora, and then climbed Mount Olympus. And so that will be relevant a little later in the story. Back to Rosalind and I, then we ended up getting together as a couple and had a nice, however long it was, 10 days, 2 weeks, I guess mostly just on the Peloponnese. As far as I can remember, I didn't go to any other islands other than Corfu and Santorini on that trip. Maybe we went to Meteora together, but I kind of don't think so. But we ended up back in Athens and then took a ferry north. She wanted to climb Mount Olympus, and so she was going to do that on her own since I'd already done it, and we would take a train together, hop off the train, or rather she would hop off the train at the stop for Mount Olympus and go on her hike, and then after that go on her own back to London. But I would stay on that same train and I guess head up to Thessaloniki. And I just forgot to fill in part of the story, which is going to be relevant later today, which is that, as I said, I remembered hitchhiking with Rosalind. So we hitchhiked from somewhere around here to the southern tip of one of the peninsulas of the Peloponnese. There are 3 fingers hanging down. Nero's house, Octagon. In the 1st century AD, the building had replaced the sanctuary of Hestia, as well as other buildings of classical times. Nero, who had lived at the sanctuary during his participation to the Olympic Games of 67 AD. So Nero, a Roman emperor. So that's a clue about the, Greco-Roman, we say. They get mixed together, but that wasn't by choice, as far as the Greeks would say, to the best of my understanding. The Romans invaded and conquered Greece, so the Greeks didn't say, hey, come on over here and take our land and we'll all be friends. The Romans did their Roman thing. They did a lot of conquering. Of course, the Greeks did too, under Alexander the Great. But the Greco-Roman civilizations were intermixed for a long time, while still retaining their separate languages, Latin and ancient Greek. Their gods got a bit mixed up. There's Heracles in Greek, who is Hercules in Roman. And so Rosalind and I stayed in some town around here somewhere. Maybe it was a little bit further south, but as a day trip, we hitchhiked from that town south to the southern tip of one of the peninsulas, and I assume it must be the westernmost point of the Peloponnese. And there is a castle there, Methoni Castle. And so we hitchhiked to that castle. And I am planning to drive to that castle next. Now, looking at the pictures online, it doesn't look familiar. So I am curious to find out once I get there if it is the castle that we went to, or if there was another one elsewhere on the peninsula, or if maybe it was one of the other peninsulas, not sure. But that will be the mission for after I leave Olympia here. And so, at the end of our trip, then we take the train and say goodbye. Now, there was a little problem with Rosalind climbing Mount Olympus. This is kind of strange. Which is that at the top of the peak, there is a registry in which you can write in your name and whatever you want. It's just like an open journal. So I had written a comment in there referencing the Swedish girl. saying something about, I didn't like write her name or anything. I just said something about those beautiful Swedish women. And here Rosalind goes, who I just had a little, week or two romance with, to go climb the mountain, and now she's going to read that thing written there, which was before she and I had gotten together, but for her to read that after we'd been together, I never confirmed with her if she actually, read my entry in the journal. There would have been other entries since then. I don't know. I never asked her. I did see her again in London because I was flying out of London at the end of that trip after my backpack had gotten stolen. And I had $50 left to my name and no backpack and no tent, but I had my passport and my ticket and the other absolute essentials. And so I got myself to London and met up with her for the last couple of days before I flew out. So she is who took that photo. Okay, but where was the photo taken? I'm not seeing anything so far that looks at all like that spot. But it is a really massive site, and there is more to see, so maybe something will jog my memory at some point here. So we have some massive stones here. Huge columns that fell down. So I guess that's saying Southwest Building, 1st to 3rd century AD, large building complex of the imperial period. It consisted of a central court with colonnade and an open-air swimming pool, 3 big halls and smaller auxiliary rooms. And then Leonidaean Thermae, 3rd to 6th centuries AD, small, well-preserved bath, part of an extensive and devastated building complex. Mosaics and a perfect wall heating system are still preserved. So I guess that is the Leonidaean Thermae, and that is the Southwest Building. And so Rosalind and I did end up reconnecting later. I forget if we exchanged addresses and exchanged a few letters or whatever shortly after that trip. I don't recall at all. Probably we did a time or two, but lost touch eventually. And then I got back in touch with her through a very random way, which is that she has a distinctive last name, which I won't say, but I sent her an email to Rosalind, her last name, at hotmail.com. And it worked. That was her email address. Just a complete guess. And so we got back in touch and then became friends on Facebook later. And then ended up seeing each other in person just one time in London. That was a few years ago. I think fairly recently, like right after COVID or something like that. She is now married and has 2 children. But I am not finding anywhere that remotely looks like it could have been where that photo was taken. It is certainly within the realm of possibility that I got that wrong and it was somewhere else in the Peloponnese that that photo was taken, but all this time I've thought that it was here at Olympia. So one other fun adventure we did together. Here's another photo that Rosalind took of me. And this was on a hike in which you take a train from somewhere in the north central of the Peloponnese, and then you take a train like a, short, like a toy train kind of a thing, a few miles or 10 miles or something like that, south, but into the mountains, into this canyon, and then you can hike it back. And so we took the train up there and then walked back, and that was on the walk back when we came across a turtle. Another Leonideion, end of the 4th century BC. Large rectangular building for the accommodation of the officials. Built about 330 BC. It was named after the architect and donator Leonidas from Naxos. So that seems to be the site, although maybe there is something more to see, including an ancient theater. So let's poke around a little more. So I guess there is another museum there. That is the whole site. I asked the workers there, and there isn't a theater at the Olympia site. So I'm not sure what is at the other museum, but I think that I'm going to skip that because it is time to commence the journey to Methoni Castle. I need to make it happen today because tomorrow is Tuesday, closed on Tuesday. But according to Google, it is open until 6 p.m., so should have plenty of time to get there. It is a 2-hour drive, so we shall see what we see along the way. And no luck finding where the picture was taken. It will remain a mystery. Goodbye, Olympia. See you next time. Hey guys, so it is about 2 hours later. I am now 5 minutes from Methoni Castle. As you can see, raindrops on the windshield there. It just started raining a few minutes ago. Hopefully this goes away, but I don't think it will get in the way too much of exploring the castle. So I am very, very, very curious to find out if this is in fact the castle that Rosalind and I hitchhiked to. So I'm going to describe the castle now, and let's see how my description matches up with the castle. Now, first thing is that Rosalind and I arrived there and it was closed. I don't think because it was a Tuesday, but because we had arrived too late. It had closed at like 1 in the afternoon or 3 in the afternoon or something like that. And so we snuck in. There was a way to get in, going up kind of a dirt embankment, and then there was like a crack in the wall, something like that. We were pretty easily able to get in, and then of course nobody in there, and we explored it, and nobody caught us, and it worked out. Now it is currently, well, the clock here says 15:43, that is 3:43. However, it is an hour slow, so it is actually 4:43. And according to Google, then it closes at 6 p.m. So fingers crossed that that is correct. So my memory is pretty fuzzy, but basically, as I said, like dirt embankments, and then that goes up to pretty big castle walls, and then you go inside and a quite big open area, and there's a little church inside. I clearly remember the church, going inside and sitting inside the church, and then there were some like turrets, I guess you call them, the like corners where you would go up and then there would be a spot for a shooter to sit or whatever. Something like that, you know, like a little round thing at the corner of the castle, which most castles have, but that is basically it. But let's see if there's a big wide open space and a church in the middle of it. All right, 5 minutes away. Methoni. And to the best of my recollection, there is water on 3 sides of it. I think we went for a swim right next to the castle after exploring it. But hey, if it's closed, maybe I can sneak in again. Okay, I see castle walls. And so far, I have to say, it's not really looking like it. I remember the view coming up to it being quite different, but it's been 35 years, so the memory is not necessarily fully correct. And good news, I saw people walking inside. Excellent. Here it is, and it is phenomenal. But so far not triggering any specific memories. You know what? That beach does look like the beach where we swam. Looking at it from here, though, it does not look like a castle you're going to sneak into, and we definitely snuck into it. But perhaps around the side over there, let's go inside first. And if I confirm it's it, then I will look around the side over there and see if maybe there was a way that we could have snuck in. Wow, it is a really just spectacular one. Yes, that beach is exactly how I remember where we swam. The walls of Methoni. The earliest construction phase dates back to the first Venetian rule, 13th to 15th centuries. During this period, Methoni is a seaside fort bearing a simple vertical curtain and towers. In the course of the 15th century, the castle undergoes a series of modifications and additions. Central Gate, Moat, Bembo Bastion, Loredan Bastion. Okay, the moment of truth coming up here. I guess maybe you buy a ticket inside or it's free. Okay, it's actually open until 8 o'clock. Tuesday closed. Oh, here we go, ticket office. So €5. And I think that this is going to be it. It feels close enough so far, and whoa! It kind of has to be it, because I know that it was the end of one of the peninsulas here on the Peloponnese, and I'm pretty sure we didn't go to the end of either of the other peninsulas, so here we go. Okay, big open space. I am getting more and more certain that this is it. Yes, I believe so. How did we sneak in? Wow, it is really huge. Holy moly. I think that it was that corner over there. I kind of remember that. Church. The Great Piazza di Armi, the Great Square of the Arms, is a reference point for the social life of Venetian and Ottoman Methoni. Through contemporary travelers' accounts and historic documents, one gets a vivid picture of the city's wooden houses, the narrow paved streets, the main market street. So, more than just a castle for the royals, it sounds like this was the city of Methoni. Yeah, this must be it. So let's look over here really quick. Okay, this is like a whole other section. There's more of the wall. I did not remember how massive it was, and we had it all to ourselves. So maybe that could be what I was thinking of, the turret or whatever. Well, there's a few of them. I remember going inside and looking up. I kind of remember it as being, multi-leveled. But maybe that could have been the tower on the corner over there. The door of that church looks familiar. I remember it as being smaller. That was my memory, but I think that must be it, unless there's something else, another church beyond it. So this was a jumping off point for the Crusaders. I mean, it has a long history, but one of its functions, Crusaders heading to the Middle East to try to take it back from the Muslims. And that conflict continues. Israel and Palestine. In the case of the Crusaders, of course, Christians, but a similar conflict. And so that is a very different kind of structure there. I wonder if that is from the Ottoman period. Let's get down there and check it out. And definitely go inside the church. Let's see if I can walk all the way around there, get up on top there, and see if it makes sense that we could have snuck in somehow from that side. Okay, what does it look like here? We definitely did not sneak up any of this. You got to be careful here. Slip and then boom, over the edge. Let's see the view from up there. Could we have snuck in and then come up through this? That seems a little familiar. Man, this castle is just so extensive. So as I said, sea on 3 sides. Ooh. What? Boom. This must be it. What is it like down here? I think that is outside of the castle walls. And so we must have walked around here. And boom, 35 years later, they still haven't plugged up the hole. I hadn't remembered a hole, but there you go. What a trip. My God. That is just absolutely wild. So much to explore here. And the modern town of Methoni. So as you can see, you can just walk along that road, get over there, steps going down to the little rocky beach, and then through the hole. Okay, let's go inside the church. Looks like that says Metamorphosis. 1920. I hear birds inside, and that was one of my memories back then, was birds inside the church. Whoa, oh yes. Benches. Yeah, it does feel a little smaller inside. Wow, what a just very surreal church. It feels very old. So we have that very strange looking domed structure. I will head there in a minute, but also a pyramid. Huh. This could be the tower that I was thinking of that we went inside. Very dark and gloomy. Cross right there, and I can see a pigeon through the hole. So these must be Ottoman period. What is it? Thermal baths? Huh. What would this be? A very small space. I guess it could have been baths. That makes sense. The holes in the ceiling. So there would have been above ground structures for the hot water. Man, a lot of history in this place. More thermal baths, it looks like. And look at that, definitely a Muslim structure, Ottoman.